Success campaign, which is using effective attendance strategies. We have addressed other shared success strategies in the recent past, so please do check out Gateway Live for access to those webinar recordings. So again, thanks for joining us. We're your hosts, and from the National Network Office, I'll ask Chris to go ahead and introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Barnum, and I'm here to receive the questions that you may choose to type in to your control panel. As Prentice just explained, you can also raise your hand, and we can hear your voice. But if you'd rather just type your question, do that, and I will share your question with the group. Thanks.
And I'll just remind our panelists, whatever noise is happening in your office, that sound will also travel into the webinar, so just be mindful of that. All right, so the outcome for today's webinar is for Gateway College directors to share strategies, practices, and tools to increase or maximize the percentage of students who attend classes regularly and at high rates. So I want you to meet the panelists, and we have a screen here with the panelists. And first up is Dr. Irvin Sweeney, Director of Camden County College. That program opened in 2011. They've served over 239 students to date. Next up, we have Director Jeanelle Soto-Quintana, Director at Pueblo Community College in Colorado. That program opened in 2009, and they served over 620 students. And then finally, we have Dr. Karl Debro, Director at Gateway to College in Contra Costa. It's in Northern California. They opened just last fall, so they've got a year of service under their belt, and they've already served over 294 students. And as we go through this webinar, this will be the order that we'll ask the panelists to share their thoughts. So we'll start with Irvin, then Jeanelle, and then Dr. Karl Debro. So now we're looking at average attendance rate of students attending all classes in an academic year. And on this chart, you can see first up with Camden County College for academic year 2011-2012, their attendance rate was, not spectacular, but, it's at 79%. But then in academic year 2012-2013, you can see that they boast a 93.4% attendance rate. So that represents a significant jump. Next, there's Pueblo Community College, and for academic year 2011-2012, they had a 82% attendance rate. Solid, not super spectacular, but solid. But you can see in the academic year 2012-2013, there was a solid increase with that attendance rate moving up to 88.3%. And with Contra Costa, again, they only have a year under their belt, but they boast a 90% attendance rate. And I think what's noteworthy about that is, this is their first year serving students, so perhaps they're on to something there. So, Dr. Irvin Sweeney, do you want to say hello to our participants?
Well, first of all, let me thank the network for giving the opportunity for us to engage in the discussion. And I want to hail up everybody across the network who are doing such a great job of trying to give our students a real second opportunity. A lot of love from Camden City.
Thank you. All right, Irvin, if it's okay with you, I'd like to move to a question related to strategies, practices, and tools. And the question is, what strategies, practices, and or tools did you use to motivate students to attend classes regularly and at high rates?
It's an interesting question. And we found ourselves as being a very young center. Once we came off the first semester, going into the end of the school year, we paused to do an evaluation of where we were and what sort of outcomes we were getting in terms of attendance. So therefore, we started to evaluate and do a comparative analysis based on the Camden City per se, and then nationally. And we were very ably assisted through by utilizing the national network database, first of all, and then there was a specific project, the cycle of inquiry, which forced us to look and evaluate ourselves and develop an action plan. So then we developed a 6-point action plan to promote persistence, first of all. And in a sentence, I could say the main thrust of our approach was that let us give the students a reason to want to be here. Let us make it interesting here at the center, and therefore our focus was looking from a wholesome standpoint in terms of the development of the student. Specifically, we introduced an incentive reward system where every month we would award the student who had the best attendance in class in school for that entire month. And every month would be an independent competition. And at the end of the semester, we have this overall winner into looking at our incentive reward system. Then we established a student council, because we thought that if we can get more peer pressure and have the students helping us in the exercise, it would be a lot more meaningful. In addition, we then branched out in our thrust to give them a reason to want to be here, to have field trips to colleges, to educational places, and also to River Sharks, which is a baseball center. But we utilize that visit as job incentives, having the people in the various areas, the managerial positions, to discuss job opportunities. We also focus heavily on a job placement. And then we did something unique, very unique, which embraced or encouraged the entire community to get involved. We started a project called the Dress for Success Project. And at the end of that project, we were able to give each student, both male and female, a complete suit. And by complete suit, I mean shirt, pants, shoes, ladies, dresses, accessories, everything, all donated by the community. So it was more of, if one may say, providing incentives for students to be here and giving them a reason for wanting to stay here, and then getting everybody to be on the same page.
Wow, that's very comprehensive, and as you outlined, there's a number of approaches that you've taken, and I wanted to just back up a little bit. You mentioned monthly incentives. What were those incentives?
Well, apart from recognition, we had an official awarding of a certificate for the best attendance for the month, but we also utilized the opportunity to solicit some monetary gift cards from various instructors and other personnel in the college. So a student was able to get a $10 gift card, a $15 gift card, something of value as such.
Okay. And then in your estimation, obviously students responded well, but in your estimation, how did students respond to the recognition element of focus on attendance?
Well, I thought students embraced it. As a matter of fact, after the first month, when it was clear that there was some monetary incentive for one, you found students who indicated that, look, I will be winning next month. I will be doing this. And overall, once we recognized that everybody was making that effort, at the end of the semester, we had a pizza party for the entire group, you know, in recognition of their contribution and at least an effort to be here. Because we were convinced that once they are here, they will succeed and they will do what they need to do. But the thing is to get them to want to be here.
Yeah, and I see that with like I said, the comprehensive approach that you've taken. So it seems like there's an element focused specifically on attendance, while the other elements, they have a different focus, but they can encourage a student's motivation to want to show up for that.
If I may say, though, that I would not divorce them. I think there's a direct relationship. Okay. Because we found through the enthusiasm in the other interventions, that was one of the main driving force, even more so than the incentive reward system. Because I think once students begin to recognize that you were looking at their total development, we found for the first time in many cases, they were being placed in a situation where they consider people were concerned about them and not just about math or the English or something of that nature, which actually gave them even a greater reason to want to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, I get it. And not to be lost, though, as you began to speak, you alluded to sort of assessing the state of your program by looking at data, and one of the things you mentioned was the cycle of inquiry. And for those who aren't familiar with that, that is a process by which you look at your own program's data and begin to ask questions about things like attendance or C or better or persistence, and then develop an action plan to address that. So that's what Irvin's talking about. All right, so moving on to the next question. Tell me a little bit about how the team came together in order to pull off these approaches. What were the roles and responsibilities of others involved with in supporting improved attendance?
Well, generally speaking, we had to make sure the entire staff was aware of what the goal was, that they bought into the program and sold it as their own, and not just the staff, but the student body, the student council, because, as I say, we wanted to bring pressure to bear, not just from the administrative and instructional staff, but from the actual peers, the peers who they elect to represent them in a student body. So we insisted that it must be a collaborative effort. And at times we would have members of staff engage in the prize giving ceremony. We would have students on the leadership board involved in the whole prize giving. But it was a case of everybody seeking to reinforce the message and to what our goals were. So I don't know if I would say that there were specific roles, except that we knew what we wanted to achieve in a general way, and right. we sort of encouraged everybody to be focused on what the intended outcome was.
Yeah, it definitely helps to have your team all on the same page, and what I like about what you said is it wasn't just the staff, but the students were also working towards the same ends. So I think that likely gives added power to other students. So thank you. So let's talk a little bit about costs. You mentioned things like field trips, incentives, and whatnot. So I'd be interested in what the costs are that were associated with improving attendance, and also any changes or tweaks that you're considering, either to strategies, practices, or tools. And we'll take that first part first. Tell us about.
I think we'll be unreal if we do not expect that there will be a cost to any intervention of this nature. We were able, though, to have a lot of contributions in terms of the gift cards. I went across the college. I mean, I remember one particular month, I went across the college and I went to the dean, went to the vice president and said, look, we are doing this project. We need you to give a $20 gift card. And invariably, you always get a yes. But things like the field trips, some of the other activities that you get into, the River Sharks, visiting this baseball game, it did cost us some money, but we did not look at it as an expenditure simply for this project. We looked at it as part of the whole marketing activity, that if you succeed in getting these results that you strive for, then you're doing the program a great service, in that you're putting the program in a position where the numbers will speak for themselves. And we found that by doing so, we were able to graduate like 49 students at the end of the semester, which meant that we had the local television, 2 local televisions, we had the Secretary of Higher Education, we had the Mayor of the city, we had every newspaper covering it and doing live interviews. So our initial investment was actually viewed as a long-term marketing investment. In terms of what sort of tweaks and adjustments we think we could make, now that we have had 49 graduates, we are looking at adjusting our approach to make sure our graduates play a greater role in the execution of this particular intervention. Because we think a lot more peer pressure with 49 students who have gone through and have been successful, that it will be useful. Plus, in addition, we want to establish more linkages in terms of employment for students. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, these students, part-time jobs and so on, we were only able to get about 25 part-time jobs last semester, last school year. But we want to see if we can step up on that so students would understand that we are concerned about their total development and survival.
You know, I think we need to pause on that 49 graduates. Everybody just pause and think for about for a few seconds. That's pretty phenomenal. And I hope that point was not lost on the rest of the participants here, just in case they have questions in the future about, wow, how did he graduate 49 students? And the inclusion of students as role models, mentors, and things like that, I think is an underutilized resource around the network, and I personally would encourage more of it. All right.
If I could just add one thing to that, those graduates, next week, Friday, we are going to be holding our first meeting towards the establishment of an alumni association, because we think that they must play a special role. They have so much to give back in terms of taking the program to the next level, which will impact attendance and all the other areas. So we are trying to see if we can get a forum in which they can do that easily.
That sounds great. So you threw out a lot of stuff. You're doing a lot of stuff. But maybe, for other Gateway to College programs that are interested in improving their attendance, what are some first steps that you can recommend so that they can leave this webinar and begin to take action?
Maybe it's not much that we can recommend after just being up for just 2 years. We're just beginning our 3rd year. But a few things I would suggest to any new program coming on stream: be concerned about the total and wholesome development of the student. It's more than just the academic side of it. And you would find that students would react very positively if, as you heard in the PLC, if you can provide pleasure in the classroom and that you get to the college center. Because we have had students, even some who have completed, they come here as their home. They see that people here care about them, and if there's nothing else, while it is true I have mentioned some material incentives, they can be useful, but in the final analysis there's nothing which would replace the love, the care, and attention of the staff for the students. They do react to it.
Wow. Yeah. And, everything that you said, that's been a consistent theme, starting with the comprehensive approach to improving attendance, mentioning that you make your program a place where students want to be, and one way to do that is to let them know that they're loved and cared for. So, all right. Let's see. Okay, so thanks, Irvin. I'm going to go ahead and move on to Jeanelle. Jeanelle, you want to say hello to our attendees here?
Hi, I'm Jeanelle.
Hey. So, same question, Jeanelle. I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about strategies and approaches that you use to motivate students to attend classes regularly and at high rates.
Some of the things that Irvin was saying was a lot of the things that we do. Like a bulletin board of recognition to just get them excited. You know, we have it. Sometimes I have, like, my husband comes to help me with things, and he'll see my classrooms, and he says sometimes it reminds me of elementary. And I tell him what worked in elementary works with our kids, because in elementary school most of our kids felt loved and special. And so we have these little boards with their names on it, and there's competitions between different cohorts. This semester is the first time I've had 3 cohorts. And 2 of them are in competition right now for attendance and just different things, and they see their boards on the wall, and they tell each other, and they tease the other resource specialists, and they tease the other students in the different cohorts. So as a visual, that's always worked, that competition. But our biggest motivator, I think, is just our genuine relationships with students. Our students know that they're cared for, that this is a safe place, just like Irvin was talking about. Whenever I hire people, I always tell them, you may know how to be a teacher, you may know how to be an advocate, but one of my biggest philosophies here is I want your students to feel like they're not just your students, but almost like, what would you do for your kid, your own kid? And why would it be any different for these kids? Because for most of our kids, this is it. Half of our kids are considered Title X, like homeless or displaced. So we are about the only adult that actually cares about them in a healthy way. And so that's the biggest thing, just that genuine relationship. And what I mean by that is not that I ever ask my staff to do things out of pocket, but our students know when I'm buying something, when the program is buying something, when I got a grant to do something. And that's special to them. But what's really special is when their resource specialist brings in something out of their own money because she's proud of them or he's proud of them. When our kids have kids and we all of us go visit the baby and have a gift that we purchased, or when they have deaths in their families, we visit them and we send them a card all together.
Jeanelle.
Yes, sir.
You know what that sounds like?
What?
It sounds like what close-knit families do.
Very much. And they love it. And half the time when we go do that, you know, their families, you know, a lot of them aren't very functional families, very dysfunctional. And so they're shocked that we're there and there's no judgment. We're there just to show our support. When we have some really difficult students and they actually complete something, we make dates with them, you know, and we'll be like, if you do this, we're going to go on a celebration lunch. And we really do. We take them wherever they want. One of my staff, the most expensive celebration lunch we ever did, so now we have a restriction. It costs us almost $60 out of pocket.
Wow.
Now, you know, we learned our lesson and we can't say anywhere.
So how you capped that dollar figure, huh?
Yeah, well, we kept the places.
Yeah, gotcha. All right.
Another thing is we have some grant opportunities here that in our community that has helped us with bus passes. So we're able to give students bus passes without asking questions, just quick things. All right, you have a need, here we go.
Right.
And here's some just more accountable stuff, but we require our students to make up any lost instruction time. So if they say they can't come in this morning for their class because they have an appointment, we go, okay, you get to come to the PM cohort then. I'll tell Mr. Bannister you're coming. We don't let them get away with that. And if they can't, then we make them make the time up on a Friday or something. And we talk about how it's so important for you to be men and women of your word. And if you say you're going to do something, you have to do it. And it's not punishment. It's just expected. During count period, of course, this is it. We do lots of just different giveaways, and we have lunch specials and all of that kind of stuff. But really, our students don't see it as a difference because we are always giving them different little things. And it doesn't take a lot to do that. We have a boot camp before the semester. And we require students, all foundation students, to participate in boot camp. And we can quickly tell which students are going to give us the most difficult time, because if they're a little iffy in boot camp, they are, according to our data, the kids that really struggle during the semester. There's so many different obstacles. So if they don't come to boot camp, we tell them you can either make up the time, or you can try again next semester, and that's really worked.
And what? How long is the boot camp, and what are some of the topic areas that you focus on?
It's anywhere from 3 to 4 days, and it is a lot of group. It's a lot of what we would think of as icebreakers, group think. Creating bonds within their cohort, that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But also getting them their passwords so that on the first day of class, they're not having to do that. They just get to go into learning. So they're getting in all their passwords, they're figuring out, they know exactly what they're required to do for the semester, and even for the rest of their time with Gateway. There's some different kind of competition activities, and some of it is physical and just fun and letting them be kids. But some of it really is about preparation that needs to occur before the first day of school.
Can we talk about resources a little bit?
We do have an on-site with our campus counselors and doctor, as well as dental services that our students have been able to use. So when a student calls and goes, oh, miss, I don't feel well, I go, okay, come and see me, and let's go see the doctor. So them knowing that happens, they know that they're not going to get away with just a headache of complaining, but also if they really are sick, then we're able to help them. And for our kids, sometimes there's, I hate to say it, but this week we had a young girl that had STD. And had we not had a doctor on hand to give her the help, she wouldn't have went anywhere else. In fact, she wouldn't have said anything because she was embarrassed by it.
Right. And the fact that, again, going back to that relational aspect, that sort of that way that you create that culture in your program made it okay for this young lady to even have that conversation in the first place, right?
Correct.
Can we talk a little bit about roles and responsibilities? I mean, you alluded to it a little bit. It sounds like everybody chips in at different phases with regards to supporting students, but is there anything to be said with more specificity around roles and responsibilities?
There's probably two big things. The other things are just, you know, what's required of the job. But the big thing is focusing on progress, not perfection.
Say that again?
Focusing
Say that
on
again. I think that's important.
Focusing on progress, not perfection. And when we have our, you know, regular meetings, I talk about, okay, I know you're frustrated with this kid, but then we put it into perspective. It's a month into the semester. This kid has had this bad habit for 17 to 18 years. We need to be patient and recognize, have they changed since the beginning? And how can we reward them for that and focus on that instead of getting so mad because they're not the kids that we just graduated. So we always remind ourselves about that.
I like to focus on progress, you know, particularly with our students who may not have seen a whole lot of success in their academic careers, and you know, focusing on progress are opportunities to point out to the student when he or she has been successful.
Prentice, this is Chris.
Hey, Chris.
I have a couple of questions here that I want to insert, and I'm not sure this is, I'm sure Jeanelle can respond, but I would wonder if the others might too.
Absolutely.
I have a couple of questions, and they're both more procedural. One is in terms of state laws. Someone is asking, Ben is asking, if there are compulsory attendance laws in your states that you're having to meet. And I want to throw the other question out at this time too, because they're both procedural, like I said. The other question from Aaliyah is, how is attendance recorded? Is it in a homeroom or for each classroom period? I just want to get those out there.
All right, so maybe we can get Jeanelle, Irvin, and then Karl to respond in that order.
With regard to attendance, our foundation students, the attendance is taken by their resource specialist every day. And we put that into the database, but we also have to put it into our school, our partnering schools database, so they know what's taking place as well. Those are the easier ones because we see them all the time. With regard to our transition and our continuing students, they're required to come and sign in our office daily. And of course, they're teenagers, so they forget. And so we call them at the end of the day and they're still here, or we can confirm that they were actually in class, then we'll sign that they were here. As far as, so that's how we record attendance. As far as the attendance laws, in Colorado, the big period of time that they watch is this count period week. Or it's two weeks. So count day is October 1st, and you know the 5 days before and the 5 days after. We have to do a lot more attendance verifications. So we have forms that they take to their instructors, and we use that to show the state. But we're on them every day, not just count day. So they just think it's something that they have to do. They don't even remember count day because nothing changes for us.
Okay. Irvin, same question. Are there compulsory attendance laws in New Jersey, and how do you record your attendance?
Yes, there are attendance laws. We record attendance on arrival, right at the front desk, and we also have to enter it in the city's database on a daily basis. But we also record attendance during every class and try and reconcile it with our attendance here on the arrival. What I would tell you is that because we enter our attendance into the city's database, we do benefit from services which seek to enforce the attendance laws. So students will get letters and parents will be threatened or even taken to court if necessary.
Karl, same question.
Yeah, there are attendance laws in California. What we do, students are required to, well, the school year is required to go 180 days, 5 days a week, 180 minutes per day. We have an evolving policy, so I would say that right now attendance is done a little differently for each of the cohorts. The third and newest cohort has the most stringent expectations. They come in and sign in on SARS. They sign out on SARS when they leave. They also have a check-in where they meet their resource specialist before class. After they've signed in, the resource specialist then checks to see, do you have your books? Are you on time? And then each of the teachers in the foundation courses takes attendance and reports it to my assistant, who then reports it to the district. The procedure there is evolving, so we have one district partner, and West Contra Costa Unified uses PowerSchool, so the teachers report attendance on Google Docs, and then that gets turned into PowerSchool, and just now we got the requirement to print out PowerSchool reports periodically and have each teacher sign to confirm that the reports are accurate. I don't know if that completely answers the question.
Yeah, that sounds good. And then SARS sounds like it's a perhaps electronic type
Yeah,
of
some kind of electronic thing. I'm not familiar with it, other than there's a little computer screen and a keypad that has just numbers on it, and students put in their student number when they come in the morning, and then they sign out with it as well.
Okay. And I know a number of programs have begun to institute a swipe system where students use their school ID to swipe in and swipe out upon arrival and departure. So, all right. So back to Pueblo, making it happen. Jeanelle, what sort of costs are associated with your approach to approving attendance? It sounds like a lot of it is just a lot of high expectations and holding students accountable, but then there's some other costs associated with celebrations and things.
I would say the biggest one is probably gas, because we do regular home visits. Every day somebody's doing a home visit for a student that wasn't there that day. So that's the biggest one. Again, a cost with regard to the different incentives. We have a indirect cost for the scholarships for bus passes, which we utilize a lot, but that's picked up by a Levert Hogue scholarship fund that we have in our community. And then during count budget, we have a budget line that I put aside. And for all of my different programs, we spend about $2,000, $2,500 a year for just those 2 weeks. But what I'll tell you is the incentives that we buy during that count period of time, what we recognized when we used to get the little frilly, foo-foo kind of gifts, yeah, kids got excited, but what they really need were like jackets and that kind of stuff. So I was able to make an agreement with the bookstore to buy college apparel, and when they clearance things down, they call me right away, and I purchase those and hold them. So my kids love wearing college apparel. They love having a pullover, or the things that we kind of take for granted.
Right. It's funny. A funny thing about having a college name on your shirt, I think there's something about feeling like you're part of the institution as well.
Absolutely.
Are there any changes that you intend to make to how you approach motivating students to attend class regularly and at high rates?
I think there's been two things that we just recently changed, and that's the complete makeup of true time. So if you missed 2.5 hours, you're going to make up 2.5 hours, and it's usually the day of. If it's not the day of, then it's a Friday when we have academic lab, and nobody wants to stay late on Friday.
Right. So how do students make up time? What do they do? in
Well,
order to make that happen?
We are lucky enough to have, I have a different program here, and it's a competency-based open lab program as well. And so it's an open lab till 8 at night. So we make them go in there, and they have to work on their stuff and show and sign in and show. So we have a little bit more flexibility because we have shared services. But that way, and the reason why I did it that way is in the past, resource specialists would make them make the time up, but it would take time away from the resource specialist. They would be with them. They would have them in their office working on stuff with them. And I said, that's almost a punishment to my staff.
Right.
So I told the staff, I don't want you to do that even though you really want to. You need to let them go and make up the time in the lab so that I don't want it to be enjoyable for them. I don't want it to have, you know, independent time with their resource specialist that they know they love. It needs to be in a kind of sterile environment where this is what needs, it's all about work. And
right.
Another change that we've recently done this last year, this is the first time we've tried it, was we implemented an appeal process at the end of foundation semester. So there's always those students after we do a rating scale, and we go, do we drop this student because they're on the edge, or do we take another chance? And so we built an appeal process, and there's some specific rules of what they have to do. They have to write about what the changes would be the next year if allowed. They have to admit fault, so what was the problem, and they have to present to a committee. And so it's all of the staff, not just resource specialists, but also their instructors. And they have to, it's a vote. It's a democratic vote.
Right.
And so this is the second semester that we've done it. And so we have 5 students that actually got approved. 1 is a complete repeat of foundation, and 4 are partial. And so we'll let you know how that goes.
Okay. Well, I definitely like the process that you've laid out, and I'm sure that the participants on this call have picked up on that too, and maybe they can glean some ideas and establish a similar structure for themselves. I do want to acknowledge that we are at about the hour, and we are still need to hear from Karl, and I imagine that we'll be wrapping up at about 15 after the hour, and I realize that some folks have to run, and if you do, that will be fine. This webinar will be recorded and posted on Gateway Live. So just wanted to throw that in there. One last piece, and that is what advice might you have, or what are some good first steps for other Gateway to College programs who are interested in having high attendance rates?
Is that specifically to me?
Yeah, this is the last question for you.
Okay. The big thing, just the progress, not perfection. And really working on the no judgment. Don't assume a student is going to fail. Don't assume a student is lying. Verify because they're a teenager, but don't assume because they've had a lot of assumptions already. And also very clear expectations. I don't want my staff to be pushovers either. Clear expectations from the beginning. Right at the beginning, set the pace and stick with it.
Okay. Thank you, Jeanelle.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks. Have a great day. So, Karl, want to say hello to our participants here?
Hello, remaining participants. Thank you for sticking around.
So, Karl, maybe you can spend a few moments in sharing what strategies and practices and/or tools that you use to motivate students to attend class at high rates?
Sure. I got a couple of things I wanted to say first. One is that I agree with a lot of what Irvin and Jeanette had to say in terms of how students are treated. There's a lot of love in using the term loosely. I think it is similar to, how do you interact with your kids? How would you want your kids treated? And I think that's really important. I think that's something that if you're missing that, then these strategies and things like that are not going to be nearly as effective. Mm-hmm. The other thing, I guess, is our situation is, our foundation is a bit different. Like, I have this idea that foundation continues for 4 semesters. So we have, we're in the middle of constructing consecutive learning communities, which start out we've been recruiting about 60 students per semester, and we divide those into 2 learning communities. And in the first and second semesters, they pretty much stay purely in that group, and then after that, we start to combine them a little bit based on the needs that they have for classes. And the thing to me about, I'm not clear about how widespread this process is, but in Gateway, but for me, it's about looking at, having taught community college and high school for a lot of years, and looking at how students who've been successful in high school struggle to adjust to higher ed. The foundation is, in our program, is meant to extend a long time that gives them the time to develop the success capacity that they need to develop in order to succeed after they leave the program. So that's something that may be a little bit different. Our community is, West Contra Costa is on the East Bay. San Francisco is to the west of us. It's a very traumatized community, very poor community. There are 6 high schools that we draw from, and there's no high school that's, well, there's maybe one high school that's considered sort of the rich high school, but it's not, it's just, so a lot of our students, and it may be that way in all of the Gateway programs, I don't know, but I just wanted to sort of paint that picture.
No, that's helpful.
So then a lot of what we do in terms of attendance, I think whatever success we have had so far has come out of the high level of touches that our resource specialists have with our students. They're seeing them every day in a leadership class, which they run. They're seeing them in the morning on check-in. They're meeting with their teachers every week, so that the gaps that students will tend to play to create reasons why they don't have to live up to expectations are very, very narrow, and they're hard to get through. And so I think it's really about just making it easier for students to do what they're supposed to do than to go off that path, sort of in general. We also did, the other thing I would add is this semester we did a program similar to a boot camp that was, we sort of bought whole cloth from ACE, which is the Academy for College Excellence, and they run a program that their theory is that, they began focused on reentry students, with the theory that students who are reentering community colleges, who have been through unemployment, perhaps imprisonment, all kinds of rough patches, have a kind of resiliency capital that ACE seeks to transform into academic success. And so to that end, they constructed what they call a foundation class that is a 64-hour intensive. And our students in the 3rd cohort came in basically 2 weeks early and went through 8 days of this intensive. And wow. I sat in on a lot of it. I've been to ACE's Summer Institute to check it out about 4 years ago. And that's where I got the idea that it might be a good piece to connect to. At the time, I was thinking about AVID, because I've done AVID in the past.
Right.
But this kind of program, too, Gateway, because there's no real transition for students. And this particular piece I thought might help them transition, and it certainly built a strong sense of community. And informally, teachers have reported out that they think this cohort is different than the first 2. So, you know, my hope is that they're different in the sense of less attrition.
Right.
But that remains to be seen. So those are,
oh, go ahead.
Those are some pieces that that we've done that may be a little bit different. I think a lot of the other stuff that we're doing in terms of log in, log out, attendance all the time. We're also doing makeup. We just instituted that. And I kind of agreed with Jeanette's comment about the makeup time can be a punishment for your staff, but we're having our staff get punished, I guess. And I think what they're going to do is, and we're just in the process of implementing this, we generate a list of students who've missed after a certain number of days. In our case, after your third absence, you have to make up every single one. And they're going to go to a date Monday afternoon and Friday afternoon to make them up. And we think that's important. ADA, it matters for ADA. Let me just say that from a state perspective, it matters. But it also matters in terms of the value that we're trying to establish, which is, you missed it, you're responsible for that time. Obviously, if you wanted to be here and could not, then you have no problem showing up and making up the time.
So question on the makeup piece. How do you make that meaningful? Because obviously you have to sort of manufacture a time and a place and something for the students to focus on. And
right now initially it's, okay, you have to bring work, you have to bring your homework or whatever, something to work on. It's not a class. I'm not going to be able to get the teachers to show up and reteach the class.
Right.
So it's not going to be that, but it's going to be, the expectation is you're there, you make an appointment, you show up on time, you're there doing your work silently, and then you get the credit for it. And if not, then we go to the plan B, which may be one of my resource specialists volunteered to come in on Saturdays, so we're contemplating a Saturday school for that, but I'm not real clear I want to do that.
Yeah, I hear you. Again, punishing your staff. But it's commendable that a resource specialist volunteered to be there for that. I wanted to touch on something that you mentioned and maybe have you elaborate on it a little bit. You mentioned that students show up at check-in, and this sounds like a quick little strategy that others on the line could hear. Could you say a few more words about how that's structured?
Yeah. One of the things is, so the structure is just we arrange a place and time for each student in the learning community to show up. So, and we're doing this just with our newest cohort. So there are about 60 kids. 30 of them show up in one place and 30 of them show up in another place with their resource specialist, who just goes through and does attendance and checks to see that they're prepared for the school day, and then that's that, and they're on their way. We came up with the idea because we got tired of hearing students coming late to their first class, and I don't like the idea of putting that on teachers. Having been a teacher a long time myself, I know that dealing with tardies is a whole other aspect, and I want the teachers to want to come back and teach in the learning community again. So we put that in place, and so far it's worked really well.
Cool. And I'll share this out. A number of directors over the years have shared check-in time. It's similar, except for students are broken into accountability groups. And those accountability groups are expected to be at the college 15 minutes before their first class. And members of that accountability group who don't see their other team members began to text and call those students. And that way, there's sort of an internal accountability that's developed with resource specialist oversight, and so it lessens the burden a little bit and shifts a little bit of responsibility to the students. So that's seemed to work pretty well, too.
I like that. I will say, I just wanted to add in terms of the flip side of the makeup time being a punishment for the staff is that the students really have a strong sense of accountability to the resource specialist. And the more that person knows about what's going on with the student, whether they showed up to makeup, whether they showed up on time to class, whether they're doing their homework, the stronger the sense of accountability is. And the students really also feel that the resource specialists really care about them. So yeah, it's not that clear cut to me what's the best way to go.
Right, but what I hear you saying though is leveraging that resource specialist relationship.
Yes.
For the best outcome.
Yeah.
Okay. So we got into it a little bit, but is there anything in addition to what you said already around roles and responsibilities of others supporting improved attendance?
Well, you know, I heard the thing about incentives. I'm not a big person on extra credit and incentives, and it certainly doesn't cost money. What we're doing doesn't cost us extra money. So the other thing is, like, if you're new, a lot of the things around incentives and getting gift cards and all those kinds of things, getting merchants to donate clothing and things like that, take a lot of time. So I think for new folks, it's just best to set up structures where the director can know exactly what's going on in terms of who's showing up and who isn't, and that accountability measures are clear and in place, and they come quickly, so the students don't get the idea that they're not really being held accountable.
Right, right. So you spoke to cost a little bit. Any changes or tweaks that you're considering on implementing?
No, right now we're really happy with the check-in is the new thing, and we're really happy with that because the number of students that show up to check-in and show up late to class is very small, and people are showing up to check-in on time, so I think it's really helped with attendance in that way.
Cool.
They were doing really well before, but we're just, you know, what Jeanette said about, what did she say about not perfection but progress?
Right.
I feel the same way about what I do and my staff as well. So we're not going to be perfect, but we're always trying to improve, and so that's where we are.
Okay. So yes, go ahead, Chris.
I have another question of a director wanting to dig just a little bit deeper in terms of how tracking is done with students who are out in the comprehensive campus. So could Karl or the other two directors address that a little more specifically?
And Jeanelle had to leave us,
Okay.
but I'm hoping that maybe Irvin and Karl could say a little bit about tracking students.
Well, with ours, again, because we're extending the time that they're with us, you know, they're not taking as many classes just out in the general as maybe some other colleges are. Then our resource specialists, all of them attended this college, so they know, and some of them just graduated within the last couple of years, so they know the professors, and they've got relationships with the professors, so they go and talk to the professors to try to figure out what's going on, but we do not have attendance on a daily basis for our students in those classes.
Irvin, any thoughts about tracking students on the comprehensive campus?
We require students, especially if they're linked with the program still while they're out in the regular college, to sign in whenever they show up for classes here on that particular day. But for those who have just gone through our hands, we still want to maintain that kind of linkage, and we let them know here is still a place of comfort for them, and that's one of the reasons why we want to see if we can get that formal organization, the Alumni Association, to see if it can help us in terms of not only providing us support, but maintaining that sort of linkage with students related to the program.
And, you know, I am familiar with programs over the years who have shared that even for their students who have moved to the comprehensive campus, to require them to stop by the office every day and sign in and sign out. So that might be an approach. Or if students are relying on other services like bus passes, you have those at the office where they have to see you first, sign in and sign out in order to access services continue to be provided by the program. All right. So back to you, Karl. What for other Gateway to College programs that are interested in improving student attendance, what might you recommend as some good first steps?
Well, is the issue not showing up at all or showing up late? Why is that happening? You know, I think another piece for us is that the school district that we're partnered with is really clear about what we're doing, and we're on the same page about it. So the associate superintendent made it clear to me, and I am in complete agreement with this. If you're not able to, if this isn't a good fit for you, then we need to move you on. So the students understand that too, that the ultimate accountability is that they're going to be at a continuation school that is they don't want to go to. They want to be on this college campus, but they understand that we're not in the business of granting infinite second chances. If you're not showing up, we're gonna escalate on you pretty quickly. You know, our resource specialist is going to work with you. If that doesn't change, you're going to come into the office and have a conversation with the district person, a teacher on special assignment. He's very good, very convincing. They like him, but they usually do what he asks them to do. If that still doesn't work, then you're not going to be here. And knowing that is an important piece as well. It's not, you know, and we want all of them to succeed, but it's very clear to me that if I don't draw that line on people, others are watching that too. Other students are making it, for them, really huge efforts to be there on time. And then if I'm letting people continue to show up late, continue to be absent after numerous interventions, the message gets spread to the rest of the students that you're not really expected to be there on time or there at all.
And, you know, during these boot camps, you know, you put so much emphasis on attendance, and you'd hurt your own credibility by not actually backing that up.
Right, and you say that, and to me it's like when you have that situation with a boot camp or something like that, the director and the resource specialist have to be poised to jump on the first person who steps out of line in that way, because everybody who's new to the program is looking around to see, well, did they really mean this? It's not enough to communicate it. It has to be carried through. And so if there are consequences right away for people who are clearly out of line, and that whatever those consequences are, I mean, I'm not saying you throw people out on the first day, but I'm saying that you make it clear that you notice and it matters to you. When you start doing that, the students respond to that, and I think that's an important piece of it, as well as the incentives, or whatever you want to include on the positive side.
Yeah, I you know, just very generally, I like some of the sort of foundational things that you said in that explanation, starting with understanding why it is that the student is, are they late or are they missing class? And then also I picked up on being on the same page with the school district and the superintendent, making expectations clear, and then it's clear that you have a tiered approach for how you deal with this, and the students and your team understand what that process is. So that's great. All right. So since we have Irvin and Karl, I guess it's opportunity for you to share. We'll start with Irvin. Is there anything else that you want to share that we haven't already discussed?
Well, I just would like to add that we as directors should recognize that our students could be a very, very powerful influence on their fellow students. I mean, not only on their fellow students, but across the community. In fact, our program, we have not done much marketing. Our main source of marketing has been our students out there spreading the message. And in addition, you know, we need to provide opportunities for our students to take ownership and impact the intended outcomes, because in the final analysis, it's really their program. And if they can buy into it, that they are the ones building and elevating the program and taking it to the level which would impact the community. Because if I could say, one of the things that we have as a wider umbrella is changing the image of our city one student at a time. Mm-hmm. And if our students can understand that they have an ambassadorial role to play, so to speak, in terms of the bigger picture, then hopefully it would impact their behavior, attendance, academic performance coming right through. But put faith in your students, give them an opportunity to help you to advance the project.
Mm-hmm. And that's another theme that I'm hearing, though, is leveraging the students that are currently in your program as well as those who have graduated. So bring them back and let them be ambassadors and be positive role models for the impact on the existing students and the future students. Same question, Karl. What would you like to share that we haven't already discussed?
Well, I really love what Irvin had to say, and just in general, his attitude about who those people are and their potential. For us, I guess, sort of in that vein, we started to work on a community service piece. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Are you kidding? Okay, somebody's come in here and said the president wants to talk to me, so I better get off the phone. Just a second. So the community service piece where they're going out into the community and giving back, and what they get out of it is they start to see how valuable they are to their community. So that's what I got to share.
Awesome.
Okay,
all right,
I got to run.
Okay, thank
right.
you, Karl.
All
Irvin,
right,
are you able to? Thank you. Irvin, are you able to hang on for just a couple more minutes?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Okay. So this is the time for the 16 folks that are left on the call. If you have questions for Irvin, now would be a good time for that. Chris, any questions coming your way?
There haven't been more, at least not by people who are still on the call. So I think we're good.
Gotcha. Okay. Just a few things to wrap up is, so this webinar will be posted on Gateway Live, and then for the attendees, what we'll do is we'd love to get your feedback on how we can make these offerings better. So you'll receive an invite to just respond to 4 quick questions on SurveyMonkey. And then stay tuned for the next Sharing Success webinar, and it will focus on fall-to-fall persistence, and that will be in sometime late October. So thank you for your time today. Thank you to our panelists, and Irvin, you're still here. Thank you so much for your wisdom and insight.
Thank you, too, for the opportunity to discuss with our fellow directors.
Yes. All right, I wish you all a great rest of your day. Take care.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.